New offensive coordinator Mike McDaniel spoke to the media for the first time on Tuesday, and it was our first chance to hear how he plans on making life a little bit easier for Justin Herbert.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogmeyer, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 10 seasons, but this is our 8th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day as part of the #1 sports podcast network. David, what do we got today?
Daniel, we get to hear from new Chargers offensive coordinator Mike McDaniel and his plan about how he's going to make things easier for Justin Herbert, how he's going to build things into his scheme to take some off of his plate, and why he chose the Chargers in the first place, and also that synergy that he has with Coach Harbaugh.
Yeah, it was great to hear from him and great to hear his plan, and I did think it was very thoughtful. Words are words, right? But you can see the vision as he's laying it out. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off of your first purchase. David, one of the main kind of criteria that we had for the Chargers when trying to decide who their next offensive coordinator is going to be was who is going to give them a schematic advantage, who is going to make it look like the offense doesn't need Justin Herbert to be, going through a war zone for them to put up points offensively, which is a lot of what we've had to watch over the last couple of years. And it was really refreshing kind of hearing Mike McDaniel's candid thoughts on his vision is for Justin Herbert and how schematically he is going to build in some easy throws for Herbert, which is something he is very unfamiliar with over the last several seasons, really not a ton in his entire career. So I think that was great to kind of hear his plan on giving Justin Herbert some of those easy buttons so it doesn't feel like he's having to grind it out every game.
Yeah, I mean, extremely important that this is something that we heard because we all know that is so needed. It's something that, you really need to build some things in place to be able to get the ball out of his hands quickly, get the ball into the hands of playmakers. And that's one of the things we heard quite a bit was, hey, we need to involve more of the quick passes so I can get the ball out of his hands quickly and, help move the ball down the field and protect him all at the same time.
Well, and the one thing we've always talked about too is just like not really seeing these, open passing windows and these big windows to throw into. It's always him having to kind of thread the needle a little bit. And that is just something that Mike McDaniel has had a lot of success with in the past because a lot of it is him and his ability to kind of challenge the defense's principles and really kind of put players in conflict, as he put it, defensively. And what he said was, you try to take it off of him by creating some low-cost, high-reward offense that he's firmly capable of doing, but maybe a player of lesser talent would be able of doing as well. He's still going to be able to pump the ball down the field. You got to use that can that he has as an arm, but maybe having some quicker ball-out passes at a higher frequency will be able to help him find some of those. That is from Daniel Popper, who had a lot of good quotes, but that is something that, yes, like you're building those easy throws into it. So like when you have those games where Justin Herbert doesn't seem like he's, able to do everything right out of the gate, you have a couple things that you can use to get him going, get him in a rhythm, because I think we all know that, when he's standing upright, when he's in a rhythm, there's not many better throwers of the football in the entire NFL. And I think over the last couple of years, we've just become so accustomed to Justin Herbert having to play hero ball. And I mean, even it goes back to the Phillip Rivers days, right? Where it was just Phillip Rivers down 35 seconds to go, one timeout, and having to go the length of the field, right? And it always had to be some Phillip Rivers magic that ended up in a lot of late game situations and things like that. And now, especially last year, a huge chunk of the running game was Justin Herbert running for his life and scrambling, right? I mean, the games that they won, I mean, you could take, 2, 3, 4 games where if you don't get some sort of superhuman effort from Justin Herbert, you don't win, including the game that they had against the Dolphins this year, where they absolutely lose that game if he isn't able to shake off multiple sackers, right, and be able to complete that pass to Ladd McConkey. And I think that was another kind of eye-opening part of his press conference, was him just saying, not relying too heavily on Justin's ability to do above and beyond, I think, is critical to maximize those type of opportunities. That will be one of the first things that we'll try to do, is take a little off of his plate so that he is free to do some of that when his greatness is required. Yes, he's still going to have to do the spectacular, but you don't want to rely on it, and that is something we just saw way too much of under Greg Roman.
And it's really nice to see that he was able to recognize that. And he kind of expounded on that when he said it can be taxing over time for a player to necessitate an incredible play too often to be able to score points and win football games. And it definitely felt like that was a little bit of a shot at Greg Roman, right? I do feel like, that's kind of something that
intentionally or unintentionally. That's the way I took it.
That's what it felt like to me for sure. But it's not like it wasn't true. I mean, it absolutely was true. I mean, and yes, Justin Herbert is superhuman. He can put the team on his back. And the problem is he was asked or forced, more accurately, to do that way more often than he ever should have, or the Chargers should have put him in that position to do that. And that's why Mike McDaniel's saying, hey, like, we know he can do that. We are very aware he's capable of it, but we don't want to have to make him have to do it all the time. When he has to do it, we want to make sure that he's been, in a situation where he feels good and he can let his natural talents take over when it's required, but he doesn't want it to be required all the time.
Yeah, especially like on a drive to drive, series to series basis. And this is the thing, like, out of structure plays are great, but the problem is when they're necessitated by the structure plays being terrible, which is what we've been seeing, right? Like the structure, he wasn't able to play in the structure of the offense under Greg Roman. And the only offense they were getting in so many games was just him having to escape, two guys trying to sack him, get out of the pocket and make plays down the field, either by running the ball or finding someone downfield. But have great game plans and scheme players open, and then you can save the heroics for the times when they're most needed. Because if you're having to rely on them too much, another part of it is you can get hurt, right?
Yeah.
But I thought the other kind of interesting thing, hearing McDaniel's talk, was just kind of the reverence that he has for Justin Herbert, right? And this from Eric Smith, him saying, I think he hasn't neared the ceiling of what he's capable of. Also said, his best football is ahead of him, not behind him. And that's what this move is all about, right? The Chargers are tabbing Mike McDaniel as the guy to fully bring out the rest of, the talent we know is inside there. I mean, he has the talent to be the best quarterback in the league, but coordinator after coordinator, head coach after head coach, they haven't been able to find the successful combination. That's what Mike McDaniel is being brought here to do.
No question about it. It's absolutely what he was brought in here to do. And I think everybody sees it. Everybody can recognize Justin Herbert's greatness, but they can also recognize that he hasn't been maximized to the fullest or even close to it. We know there's more in there. We know there's more ability in there. We know there's more plays in there. We also know he hasn't been put in position to be able to utilize all of his gifts to the maximum effectiveness. Yeah. And just hearing what Mike McDaniel plans to do with his scheme, how he plans to help him out, how he plans to use his athleticism to be able to really maximize what this offense can look like, it's very exciting because Justin Herbert is that guy, and I think Mike McDaniel is going to put together an offense that really brings Justin Herbert back to the forefront of this league. Like Jesse Minter did with Derwin James, I think it's Mike McDaniel and his turn to bring Justin Herbert back to prominence.
Yeah, I agree with that. And like Mike McDaniel knows, like, when they were talking about the Miami game, he's like, I've been in the league 19 years, and like, you sometimes see these guys that in an 11-on-11 game can put the team on their back and do something special. And that is nice that you're able to have that. But I think the other side of it's kind of the mental side of things. Like, for him to be paired up with Justin Herbert, like, he spoke to him, right? And when they had that conversation, basically, you could say he could hear the hunger in Justin Herbert's voice to kind of do better, right? And to get over the hump that they haven't been able to, and to attack a new process. Because the thing is Mike McDaniel also has had some playoff woes as well, right? So like, he knows, and he said it kind of feels like there's just this empty feeling in your stomach, and that is a bad feeling. And so like, you can tell that, Justin Herbert wants it. Like, he wants to be great, but this is also about Mike McDaniel being able to relate to him on a level that builds the confidence that you don't see the performance that you had in that playoff game, right? Builds the confidence of someone, an offense that he can buy into, an offense that he feels can truly help him out and that he feels comfortable in, and that will protect him, right? At the end of the day, because that is something he hasn't had. And it's one of the biggest flaws of Greg Roman last year, even with all the injuries, the inability to adapt, the inability to plan your game plan knowing that you don't have a good offensive line. That is something that Mike McDaniel has shown he can do in the past. And I really loved hearing about how he's going to use his scheme, with offensive linemen for sure, but not necessarily because of them, to help protect Justin Herbert. So we're going to talk about that and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast.
Hey, it's Matt Derry from the Locked On Lions podcast. The people I love depend on me. If I'm gone, the financial responsibilities don't disappear. I didn't want my family figuring things out during the hardest moment of their lives. That's why I knew only one place to go. I chose life insurance through my friends at Ethos. Ethos makes getting life insurance fast and easy, 100% online. You can get a quote in seconds, apply in minutes, and get same-day coverage. There's no medical exam. You just answer a few simple health questions. You can get up to $3 million in coverage. Some policies are as low as $30 a month. I love the folks at Ethos. Protect your family with life insurance from Ethos now by going to ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. In as little as 10 minutes, you can get the free quote and up to $3 million in coverage at ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. That is ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. Ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. Application times and rates may vary.
I also need to tell you guys about Game Time, because there's nothing like being in an NBA arena, the crowd, the energy, the moment. Getting tickets, though, that part hasn't always been so simple, and that's why Game Time has become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast without the hassle. It puts the advantage back where it belongs, with the fans. I pulled up the Game Time app and I looked at the next home Lakers game, and currently you can get into the Lakers' next home game against the Philadelphia 76ers for as low as $100 to see potentially Luka and LeBron together on the same court, Joel Embiid maybe even. But the best thing about Game Time is I love being able to see the all-in price up front. There's nothing like getting those surprise fees at checkout is the worst thing ever. And also, they have great last-minute options too, even if you're just looking for plans for a weekend. Check Game Time. You might be able to score some really good tickets for whatever kind of event you're trying to go to. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. That's code LOCKEDONN for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. And remember, it's gametime.co, not .com. David, there's always so much kind of, salt that you have to take a little bit when you're talking about these opening press conferences. And we know that, right? We were blown away by the initial Brandon Staley press conference. And what he said sounded good, but him actually acting it out in reality was the part where they failed. And even in the Greg Roman first press conference, right? There were still things where it's just okay, a lot of this seems very predicated, just hey, we're going to run the ball a lot better than we used to run the ball. But what became clear was he was just too married to his own philosophies and just didn't have the ability to adapt based on the players that he had, based on the injuries that they had and the obstacles they had to overcome. And it was laid bare every single time they played a good team in the playoffs. But that's why I really enjoyed what Mike McDaniel had to say about actually protecting Justin Herbert with the scheme, let alone the offensive lineman. He said it's paramount from a schematic perspective. You're trying to make sure that your quarterback is able to sustain 16, 17 game season now. And within that, you're trying to make sure that you have coordinated execution to keep him upright, to keep him from getting hit, and to be able to have completions that are a little bit more low cost and get the ball out quicker. A primary focus on how to have offense without putting him in a vulnerable position. Start with that, and you'll extrapolate from there. That is good. That is where this game planning should start. Building this offense should start. And it's, hey, how do we not have Justin Herbert be the most hit quarterback in the league in 2026?
Yeah, that might be a good idea, right? Because he was abused last year. Obviously, there's not much you can do to overcome losing one of the best tackles in football. And then, again, losing another one of the best tackles in football just a few games later, right? That is extremely tough to overcome. But there are things that you can do. And one of the things that Mike McDaniel pointed out very quickly was getting the ball out of his hands a lot quicker. Having some quicker ball out passes at a higher frequency. So much the National Football League defense is post-snap. Take advantage of that space with quick throws. One of the best blockers you can have is an open, eligible number one in a quick amount of time. And I don't think it's very difficult for a lot of us to go envision Lab McConkey getting out there, burning somebody quickly, getting wide open, and getting the ball in space and watching him work after the catch. We know what he is capable of. We know he is such a route technician. We know he can get open, and we know he's special with the ball in his hands after he gets that ball. So getting the ball out of his hands quickly, big step in the right direction for this offense.
Well, yeah, like I said, it's just also like starting with, hey, we're going to protect him, and then we'll look at explosive plays, then we'll look at everything else, but it starts with how we protect him the best, and he's shown that. Like in 2023, when Tua was leading the league in passing, they had the 16th ranked pass blocking offensive line, and Tua had the 11th most dropbacks, 609, and it was only sacked 29 times. Justin Herbert dropped back 612 times last year, right? He was sacked 54 times, almost the same amount of dropbacks, and he was sacked twice as much. I know the Chargers line was terrible, but like the Miami offensive line hasn't been great. He was working around it in his time there, and that is something that you have at least a little bit more confidence that he can do that Greg Roman just plain out wasn't doing. But I did also kind of like when they were asking him about, hey, how do you know kind of what this offense is going to look like? How do you know how to plan this, right? And this is what he said. He said, you let the tape take you to your own conclusions. You deep dive. In his case, it would be about 4 to 5 seasons of watching all his plays and kind of patternizing things that he doesn't necessarily have to tell me. He could confirm it verbally, but I like to draw the conclusions from the tape. He said, as you're learning a new offense, it's key to have a quarterback maintain confidence in his craft. That's a big one for me. That's a good sign right there. He also has the proof to back it up, right? He said that, for instance, the concept, the RPO that basically they ran most of the time with Tua in Miami was a play that he had never run before. And that was a way that he's like, hey, this is the quarterback I have. I'm going to do something I've never done before to do what Tua does best. And that's why it's so exciting, because it's like we don't even know what this offense can look like. He's telling us it's going to look like unlike any other offense in the league.
I love it. And I think it's great to hear him saying, hey, like, I can have him say things and tell me things, but I don't want him to. I want to go learn it from myself. I want to go figure it out by watching the tape and getting really, truly into the weeds, trying to know who this guy is. So I know what he does well. I can see what he does well. Then I can ask him, hey, are these some of the things that you like? That way we can incorporate that into the next offense that he wants to build completely from scratch, basically from the ground up, to make sure that he keeps that competitive advantage against the league, because he said the league is ever changing. And, you know, this is a league where you have to continue to make changes and adapt to be able to keep up and stay ahead of those defenses that are trying to do everything they can to take all of the space away from you. So very, very exciting there with what Mike McDaniel is saying he's trying to do.
Yeah, and I just really like the part about building his confidence, right? If there was one thing that was pretty clear in that last playoff game, right, was that Justin Herbert not only lost confidence in his offensive line, but he lost confidence in himself, right?
Yeah.
So to have the throws that you can build in there to be like, hey, I'm going to give Justin Herbert this easy 20-yard chunk right here and something I know he's great at, to kind of get things going again. I think that's huge. And I think for someone,
it is,
you know, mentally like Justin Herbert, that's something that's going to work great. And like, it's not always going to be asking him, because he's kind of a yes man a little bit himself, as far as like, oh yeah, I like that, whatever. Yeah, let the tape show you what he does best, right? I mean, this is a guy, you know, that almost beat Josh Allen with Skylar Thompson in a playoff game, right? Like that you tell me he can't build a offense around Justin Herbert, like there's just no chance. But I did think kind of one other telling thing was when he was talking about building an offense that works in the playoffs. And I thought it was so pertinent, obviously, to their situation. He said the biggest thing is we want to create a system of offense where guys can really feature their skill sets, evolve their game, and be their best in December and January, which is the whole point. When you're playing elimination games, whether you're playing to get into the playoffs or you're in the playoffs, we're going to have an offense that evolves to the point that our most efficient self and our best self will be when these young players were with what we have here. So that is so true, though, David, because like he's led the league in passing. He's had the best offense in the league. If that offense doesn't work, then what's the point? Like the Chargers have made it to the playoffs fine. What the problem has been is not winning there, and that's what the offensive has to be predicated on.
Yeah, absolutely. It's having the solutions to the problems that they're going to try to present to you in the playoffs when it's one and done. And we know the last couple of years, it hasn't been good enough. It's been good enough to get there, but we always felt like in the back of our minds, there's always been some kind of crux that's been getting in the way from the Chargers and Justin Herbert getting over that and getting their first playoff win and going further in the playoffs. This team's been good enough to get there. They haven't been good enough to succeed when they do. And that's why this is so important for Mike McDaniel to acknowledge, like, hey, the offense, yeah, obviously it's got to be good enough and it's got to work to be able to get there. But what does it even really matter if when we get there, we can't go out there and show everything that we are capable of doing and execute it when it matters the most?
And it's just like, I feel like really symbiotic because like Mike McDaniel was 0-2 in his time in the playoffs with the Dolphins, right? Like the Chargers, Jim Harbaugh area, they're 0-2 as well. Like they need each other. But like I said before, like Skylar Thompson, they put up 31 with them. They did have a scoop and score, right? So really 24 points, but they lost to the Bills kind of barely in that playoff game.
It's
with
21 more points than the Chargers had last playoff game.
Man, I know it, right? And both of their playoff games combined, right? So, and they also, the next year when Tua led the league in passing, they got beat 26-7 by the Chiefs in Arrowhead. And the offense wasn't built to win there. Tua wasn't built to win there, right? So all of this great high-flying regular season offense didn't matter. And you can hear he knows that. And it's about him and Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert kind of all needing each other to get over that hump that we need to see them get over. But that was the other interesting thing because it is an odd pairing. Jim Harbaugh, Mike McDaniel, two very opposite guys, but maybe not as disalike as we may seem. We're going to get into the similarities and why he took this job and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, though, I need to tell you guys about FanDuel because this is the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff, the final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, riding with the underdog, or building one last same-game parlay, this is the game everyone's been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season and make Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff to final whistle, whether you're taking the Seahawks minus 4.5 in the game or JSN to get an anytime touchdown at minus 110, right? If you're a new customer, all you have to do right now too is bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count because after the Super Bowl, the season is over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. We have a couple more talking points that we wanted to touch on from Mike McDaniel, and there was a lot, right? 42-minute press conference. It was really good, to kind of hear the vision that he has, and it's just so fun to get excited and have hope again, for this offense after the way things ended last season. And all we had to do was say we were going to do a buy or sell show, and some big thing was going to happen that we'd have to push it off to the next day. Buy or sell tomorrow for sure, every day, as I promise. But let's get back to a couple more interesting things, David, about Jim Harbaugh and Mike McDaniel, because I do think that just the hiring of Mike McDaniel, I think, shows a lot about, what Jim Harbaugh wants, and which is just to win, and hiring someone outside of the box and a lot different than him, but obviously a good guy.
Yeah.
Someone good at offense, at least, shows that a little bit. But there is a little bit of synergy between these two guys. Maybe not, maybe a little bit more alike than we thought.
Yeah, I mean, he basically said, hey, like, we're not so far apart because I started my career basically running the rushing offense. He said, some of my run game prowess in the past has been finding different solutions for light boxes. The core foundational belief that football is inside out, that's where the like-minded football 101 core values of football overlap. I think Jim appreciates the evolution of the game. And I think that's extremely important to notate that last bit because everyone knows that one of the calling cards of Jim Harbaugh teams is tough, rugged, physical, and teams that run the football. And Mike McDaniel saying, hey, I want to run the football too, but Jim Harbaugh is also saying here that I'm not going to be stuck in the past. Just because it worked in the past doesn't mean it's going to work in the future, and I am fully okay and open to what offense needs to look like now to win.
I mean, that's the funny thing, right? Like, he coached under Mike Shanahan, like a guy who ran all over the Chargers for many years, right? And that is where his roots are. He was, the run game coordinator for the 49ers for several years under Kyle Shanahan. He did coach under Gary Kubiak. I saw Daniel Popper mention, those three guys, both Shanahans and Kubiak, some of the most prolific rushing offenses that we've seen in modern NFL history. So, of course, that's going to be the common ground between these two guys. But I think this is kind of where the gray area is, right? It's the mixture of both. It's how cohesive it will be, because this is what they're basically saying, right? Like, we want to be innovative, and Jim Harbaugh wants to be, evolutionize and keep with the times and all of those things. At the same time, though, you're up with 9 minutes left in the game, and you need to grit it out and out-physical the other team and beat them into submission. We want to do that too, right? And so that is kind of where these things will mesh, because, that is not what Mike McDaniel's teams were known for in his time in Miami. They weren't known for being a hard-nosed, physical, smash-mouth type of team. So it's like, hey, how can those things intersect? Like, if they do, look out. Ooh, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, if you're getting the best of both worlds, that's
ready.
Great. But I do think, like, there is a compromise from both of these guys to have this pairing saying, like, hey, it might be different. Maybe it's not as different as we thought, but, like, what we do know is we both want to win, and we both know that we're great coaches. Because the other thing Mike talked about is just, like, for Jim to be able to be as successful as he's been, right, to go to a Super Bowl in the early 2010s, right, and then later on in the 2020s, he's winning a national championship at the collegiate level, to stay such a high level for that extended period of time, you can't be stuck in your ways, right? Like, you have to be able to evolve with the times, which is what Jim Harbaugh is showing you here. But he also talked a little bit about what sold him on the job, right? And that is something that's kind of interesting, because obviously the Chargers have a lot of things they could say, hey, look, come here. You get Justin Herbert. You get, these young weapons, ton of cap space. But he said it wasn't, like, really a true sell job in the way that you would really think it was.
Yeah, no, like he said that he had a meeting with Coach Harbaugh. He talked with John Spanos. He talked with Joe Ortiz, and basically the reason why he did take it is because he didn't feel like he was being sold a dream. He was just talking football. They got on the same wavelength, and he naturally came to the conclusion that this is where he wanted to be. This is where he needed to be. And that's why it ended up being, he said, I didn't want to be like in a marriage where I felt like I was like trapped or kidnapped. I wanted to come to this conclusion, and I wanted to be a marriage where we were both singing the same sheet of music.
Well, the other part of it is, right, like, this wasn't a desperate move. Like, who knows if you would have gotten, like, legitimate head coaching chances, right? Like, it never got that far in the process for us to really figure it out. And, like, certain teams definitely weren't going to hire him. But, like, one thing we know is every other person that had an offensive coordinator opening wanted Mike McDaniel, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, at one point, the Lions were interviewing him. They'd go a different direction, obviously. But the Eagles wanted him, didn't get him. Now they're interviewing Frank Smith. Tampa Bay Buccaneers wanted him, couldn't get him. He had options. This was not a desperate job, that he was just desperate to take.
Not at all.
They all got in the same room. Like, I didn't think it was necessarily going to happen the first day that they met, right? Like, we hope so. We told him to lock the door, but you never know, like, how it's going to go. But, like, besides that, he just said he was swooned by Jim Harbaugh, and, like, as soon as Jim Harbaugh saw he was getting swooned by him, he stuck out the hand and said, "Hey, we got a deal here." I mean, like, we're we got a little something right here. He also said, Harbaugh's trying to get him on the transition lenses, but he's not 50 yet. I like that. I like that he's not afraid to mess around with somebody that's like fun. Jim Harbaugh for sure. But, like, the thing is, the part of McDaniel that got him fired in Miami are some of the things that Jim Harbaugh is known best for, right? Like, running a program, having guys show up there every day on time to these meetings.
Toughness.
Totally. But, like, more than that, though, like, being the CEO, being a head coach, because that's what he wants, right? He wants to be a head coach.
No doubt.
You're talking about just, like, what a head coach brings to the table. There's guys who have specialties who are better in certain things than Jim Harbaugh. But he is up there as, like, the gold standard of guys that are program builders. If Mike McDaniel wants to be that, this is the guy you learn from. Also, you got 2 all-pro level tackles coming back, which doesn't hurt either, right? And he said, I think the 2 athletes we have will allow us to do some creative things in the run game. They're typically only able to do when you have certain type of athletes that can stay on the line of scrimmage and can pass pro in an upright position, but then go running down the field and block in space. So yes, all of those things, learn to be a CEO, but I'm pretty excited about some of the things they have going on offensively too. But I did think it was interesting, though. He was very transparent when asked, like, hey, are you going to just leave after one season? Are you trying to just kind of use this to get another head coaching job? Now, this from Daniel Plopper. He was pretty straight up. He said, my end goal of being able to bring championships to an organization as a head coach, that is still in place. I don't think my long vision has changed, but I very much am firmly where my feet are right now, which is being the offensive coordinator for Los Angeles Chargers and being the very best at that. And that's the thing. he's basically in a contract year every year, right?
Yeah.
Like he has every incentive. Like I'm not worried about that. Like because the best way for him to become a head coach is for them to be great offensively. And it doesn't necessarily mean he will, right? We'll cross that bridge when we get there, but it's absolutely worth it because if he goes on somewhere else, it means things went pretty spectacularly well in 2026.
Absolutely. The whole point of this is to get the absolute best coaches that you can possibly find and put them in your organization, no matter what could possibly happen after the fact. That doesn't matter. Get the best, bring them in, and hopefully get the maximum output of results because of that decision. Worry about 2027, like Daniel Popper said, in 2027, which I wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah, that you can't worry about that, right? And the other thing is too is right now he also talked about the process of kind of going through and interviewing every coach to make sure the coaches that they have on staff outside of just the offensive line position, which is still open, right? And they said they have a targeted kind of list of guys they have in mind for that, but going through everyone and making sure everyone is kind of on board with what the vision is going to be and going from there. But best case scenario, right? You find his heir apparent. Like you get guys in the building that can kind of build that coaching tree to keep having, because the thing is, like Kyle Shanahan's and Sean McVay's, those guys lose guys every year. Does the offense get worse?
Yeah.
No, because like those guys, the head guys are the ones calling the play, right?
Right.
But what you need though is to have these people learning under your wing, guys who have been with you for several seasons, for when it's time for them to take up the mantle, they can give you something and keep things going in the same direction with the same kind of offense that hopefully if he's getting hired someone else, you've built a lot of confidence in, right? But like, the only way he gets hired to be a head coach is if things go great, right? Like that's
what
the
you want.
good news, right? If you, and it's worth a deep playoff run if that's all you get is one, because especially with the Jesse Minter opening, right, and the defensive coordinator opening, who knows how many points you're going to have to score. I feel a lot better about how many points the Chargers are going to score this year after hearing from Mike McDaniel for the first time. It's time now that it's official. We can get really excited about this, and like unlike with Greg Roman, the plan goes beyond just like, hey, I'm going to make the running game good. So I'm much more likely to kind of,
Thank you, Lord,
buy into it a little more. But everydayers, I promise, no matter what news is, we will do a buy or sell tomorrow at some point. Like it would have to be the Chargers hiring a new defensive coordinator. But I'm going to say we're putting it out there. If you want to get your biggest Chargers storyline or overreaction on the show, hit us up at Locked On LAC on Twitter. Hit us up at Locked On Chargers on Instagram and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page, as well as everywhere. You can also find the show in all those places every day too. If you want a little bit more than that, you can do that in the Locked On Everydayer Club, where you can get an ad-free audio version of this podcast. You won't have to listen to any of the ads, and also will get exclusive access to the Locked On Chargers exclusive Discord channel, which you can do that and find it in the show notes if you guys are interested in that. But that's going to wrap things up for today. To make sure you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel, and listen wherever you get your podcast from. But man, I'm excited. I'm excited to see what the rest of this week brings. Defensive coordinator search still going on, new offensive staff on their way, and we'll be here as the only daily Chargers podcast to bring you the latest. But until then, guys, take it easy and go Bolts.